Mr. Chairman, you're live streamed.
To order, first order of business is roll call. Linda, please. Here.
Senator Guru. Senator Nethercott. Chairman Salvatore is excused and Chairman Kinsky is excused.
Excused. Okay, first bill to come for us is House Bill 208. Is there anybody here who wants to talk about House Bill 208? Yes.
As you recall, this is a follow-up.
Get closer to your microphone.
As you recall, we laid this bill over. We worked it last February 17th when we met last and are bringing it back to continue working on it. So this, if you recall the testimony from this from February 17th, the criticisms of the bill that came out of the discussion was that it's only half created and it's missing the other piece. So it gives the policy directives or the investment policy to the treasurer's office, but does not provide, I think, the necessary safeguards or parameters or information to the treasurer's office associated with how the fund is to be used or what the purposes of the fund are, is my recollection from that conversation to get us recentered back to what we're going to be doing here today.
Okay. All right. Any public comment on House Bill 208? House Bill 208, School Foundation Program Reserve Account. We emptied that account out, but it is capable of having more funds put in it. No public comment? Nobody on Zoom? Nobody in the room? We'll close public comment. And committee, what's your pleasure? Bill. Moved. And seconded. Any discussion, committee? Any discussion? Hearing none.
I have a discussion. Good senators of joint appropriations. So I do think we briefed on this bill before coming back into the meeting today and did determine that there is wisdom in moving this bill forward. But I don't think our outstanding questions or concerns really brought forth by the treasurer's office have been resolved. And so look forward to us getting the answers to those questions for the body, recognizing that this fund is at zero. But so the questions that I have that will need to be answered, and for LSO staff that's listening potentially, and just to clarify our thoughts, what monies will be going into this reserve account throughout the year as a result of tips from other accounts? And then what type of safeguards to the treasurer's office do we need to put in this bill draft in order to ensure that those funds are appropriately invested per the investment policy we're lining out for this fund?
And you're thinking that the Treasury Department is going to get back with you on that? You're going to hear from them?
I have no doubt in the treasurer's office's ability to do that.
Good luck. Any other discussion? Hearing none, sensing you're ready to vote. Let's do a roll call on this little bill. House Bill 208.
Senator Anderson.
Aye.
Senator Guru. Senator Nethercott.
House Bill 208 has passed the Senate Appropriations Committee. Next bill to come for us. Did somebody say that somebody was here to talk on House Bill 74? You want to go on that one second?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Committee, Darren Westby, Director of State Parks and Cultural Resources. House Bill 74 is the Outdoor Recreation Trust Fund bill. It obviously came through the House side, and we were in front of the House TRW this morning to discuss this bill, and it passed out of that, obviously, and we got re-referred to you. The funding mechanism on this originally during the interim discussion Started out as sales and use tax, and then the House, when it got to the committee, they amended out the sales and use tax and are looking to help start and fund the Outdoor Recreation Trust Fund with $6 million of biennium out of the projects and reserve account. And Mr. Chairman, that's pretty much where that stands from a funding mechanism.
Mr. Chairman.
And you were talking to the House this morning?
No, Senate.
Oh, the Senate.
I'm sorry, the Senate
Yeah,
this morning.
yeah.
If
I was thinking, you
misspoke.
got here
Mr. Chairman.
fast if you were
Sorry.
talking to the House. Yeah, the Senate committee was travel and recreation.
Correct,
Yeah,
sir.
okay, yeah, go ahead. Senate.
As a part of that committee, what we're gonna, I just want to make sure that I have this straight, because of course we have a fiscal note on here that says 30,900,000 and then 19,100,000. But all that was changed in the House version. So now what we're talking about is $6 million out of the tourism reserve account. And that's it, correct?
Mr. Chairman, Senator, that's correct. Yeah, the original fiscal note was back when it was sales and use, and it's an old fiscal note. You're correct. It's $6 million of biennium, recurring biennium appropriation to the trust fund to help get the trust fund corpus growing.
And where does the 6
And if
million
I
come
could
from?
follow from the tourism reserve account.
Oh,
And we also, wouldn't you agree? We also heard this morning in testimony from the tourism department that they were enthusiastic supporters of this bill and the appropriation.
Mr. Chairman, Senator, you are correct.
enthusiastic supporters.
I can just relate it the way it happened.
I don't get any better than that. Any more questions for the director? Any more questions? Any more questions? Hearing none, thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Any other agencies like to speak on Wyoming Outdoor Recreation Trust Fund? Trust fund, going once, going twice. Hearing none. Any public comment on Wyoming Outdoor Recreation Trust Fund? Oh. We have some public comment.
Mr. Chairman, in the sake of time and for the lack of redundancy, Commerce County is very much in support of this, as is the Wyoming County Commissioners Association. We think this is a great way for Wyoming to invest in the future of our great grandkids, because what we're doing here is not about me or my kids or even their kids, but what we do to address Wyoming's outdoor recreational opportunities for multiple generations to come. We think this is a great mechanism to do so. And indeed, it's all about investing in our future.
Can you give us your name, please?
Terribly sorry, Mr. Chairman. Robert Short, Converse County Commissioner.
Any questions for Mr. Short? Any questions for Converse County? All right, thank you for your comments.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
No other public comment? Is there anybody on Zoom?
No, sir.
Nobody else in the room? We'll close public comment. Committee, what's your pleasure? Moved and seconded, yes. Any discussion? Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, if you know, just this process associated with the fiscal notes. So for purposes of clarity to the body, so on page 10, section 3, that's where the $6 million from the tourism reserve account language is provided. So this fiscal note is an old fiscal note, as we heard testimony provided. So why is it still attached with the bill? If we know, just for process and procedures, if any of us know, or someone we should know but don't, but anyone in the crowd knows. All right, well, I'll figure that out with LSO. It's a very confusing piece and something we'll have to explain to the body that that the fiscal note is not accurate, nor should it be reflected, which is, I think, is hard to do. So.
I was assuming that section 3 was a new section by the House that put the 6 million in. Is that, and then they didn't update the fiscal note. I don't know what was in there before, but must have been something to do with 19 million. Oh,
Mr.
yes.
Chairman, the original bill, section 3, was the funding mechanism for the sales and use tax idea that came out of the interim committee. So it was originally, I can't even remember the percentage now, but it was like 2% or 2.5% off the state, how much? 2.47 out of the state side sales and use tax that would go towards the trust fund until it reached 50 million, and then it would go back. And so that was the part that was stripped out and replaced with the Office of Tourism projects and reserve account, 6 million recurring biennial appropriation.
And it was a biennial appropriation.
That's correct, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, anything else? Any other questions? Hearing none. Sensing you're ready to vote. Linda, please do a roll call on this good little bill.
Senator Anderson,
Aye.
Chairman, Senator Guru, and Senator Nethercott.
Passed. House Bill 74 is passed the Senate Appropriations Committee. Who's going to do that one? Oh, travel will. Okay. All right, good. Next bill to come before us is Property Tax Refund Program, House Bill 99. Is there anybody here that wants to present that bill? Good little bill. Oh, they're popping up like. But they're also leaving.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Brenda Henson, Director of the Department of Revenue. So House Bill 99 is a bill that came from joint interim revenue committee. And what it does is it expands the program by changing the income requirements to be 125% of household median income. And it also allows for a refund of up to 90% of the taxpayer's bill, with a maximum of 1/2 of the median residential property tax bill for the county where the property is located. There was a fiscal note on that bill. We had provided approximately $2 million for just the 1 year that we would need, in addition to the money that we had for the program as it exists under statute right now. Now, if we go back into the original appropriations bill, the budget bill, you may recall the governor had asked for $1 additional million as the law exists today. That would have put us at 4, because of the $3 million that was appropriated last session for the program for the biennium, we sent out $1.8 million in property tax refunds for the first year, leaving only $1.2 million. So we knew that we needed additional funding just to have enough to fund the refund checks under the current law for 2020. It will be 2022 refunds. So that was a total of $4 million. However, the Joint Appropriations Committee in the budget bill increased the amount in the budget to $8 million total. So right now, as the bill that I looked at this morning, right now there's $8 million for the biennium. That's 3 plus 5. So we've spent 1.8. So there's sufficient dollars for refunds for 2022. And there's also sufficient money already in the budget to fund that extra $2 million that we'll need as a result of House Bill 99. So there never was an additional appropriation in either the House or the Senate side. But I think it was due to the $8 million that was already set aside. And keep in mind, we'll be coming back to the committee for the next biennium to see if there's funding available for the next 2 years. So we're only needing to cover 2022 tax year refunds. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I answer any questions.
So the 2021 was 1.8 million, or was that 2022?
Mr. Chairman, that was 2021 tax year refunds. So then on June 1st of 2023, taxpayers will be able to apply for 2022 refunds because they have to pay them in full before they can qualify. And remember, second half of 2022 taxes is not due until May 10th of 2022.
And so are we assuming that 2022 will be like 2021? You're thinking it's going to be 1.8 to 2 million or something?
Mr. Chairman, yes, under current law. And then you need an additional $2 million under House Bill 99 because the House Bill 99 expands the number of applicants that will qualify. But I still believe that the 8 million total is sufficient. Now, there is some language within the budget that speaks to that the appropriation shall be reduced $1 for every $1 up to $5 million appropriated for the property tax refund program. If there are similar funds that are included in 4 different bills. House Bill 98, which is the homeowners exemption that's being heard in House Revenue as we speak. This bill, House Bill 99, also Senate House Bill 121, which is a deferral program. That's a bill that just simply takes the county option deferral program and makes it a statewide program with an appropriation of $200,000. And that program doesn't even start until fiscal year 25. And the only other one that is referenced in the budget bill is Senate File 136, which is that level of assessment bill, which reduces the all other property from 9.5% to 8.5% for 3 years. And to my knowledge, there is no appropriation for that bill. So right now, the only possibility if House Bill 121 were to pass would maybe be $200,000 that would be subtracted from the 8.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So Director, in this, and I know we're only looking at the appropriation, but the only way you can activate the appropriation or the money that's in this or the money in this program is to go through that same process that the current program has, which means you have to pay your taxes, wait a year, and then go and apply. So my question is, there isn't an appropriation in this bill.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Guru, you're correct. There is no appropriation. There was a fiscal note, but there was no appropriation.
Well, but it shows, I thought it shows fiscal year 2024. Fiscal note, 2 million. But for 23, there isn't anything. Is that what you're saying?
Sorry, taken by the cake, Mr. Chairman. Well, yes, I mean, for sure for 23, but I also think possibly even for the next year as well, depending. We don't know, and we don't have, right now there's $8 million appropriated in the program, depending on, like the director said, 200,000 is our exposure on the other bills that are out there. Given that, I don't see an appropriation on here for either time. I don't see it. So that's, even though the fiscal note says that, I do see the fiscal note, but
Yeah, they sent it to us because it has money in it.
Yeah.
she sent it.
You're welcome.
And no, well, at the time I was confused as well, because when we read these fiscal notes from LSO, we take them to heart, which is what we should do. And so.
And Mr. Chairman,
well,
just to be clear, it's just 2 years in each biennium. So 2021 refunds and 2022 refunds are in this biennium. And then 2023 and 2024, we'll be asking for funds for those refunds in the next biennium.
But this fiscal note says you're asking for $2 million in 24 and 2 million in 25. But that's not true.
Mr. Chairman, so the fiscal note was completed a very long time ago before the Appropriations Committee increased. Keep in mind, the fiscal note was written as if we had $4 million. to cover the program as it exists today, which would fund for 2022 refunds. The fiscal note is for House Bill 99, which expands the program. And that's in addition to the money that we needed, the additional $1 million that the governor asked for. However, all told, we've got what's remaining from the 3 million that was appropriated in the biennium budget, which is about $1.2 million, plus the additional 5 million that you added in the budget for this program.
Any other questions?
Yeah, so Mr. Chairman, this seems to be a recurring theme here of old fiscal notes that are still attached to bills that aren't being updated based on either changes in other bills or House actions. And in this case, it's the budget bill. So very helpful. Mr. Chairman, can I ask a question? So, I mean, I think I know the answer to this, but curious to hear your answer, which is you have testified that due to this bill draft and the language within it, that there'll be more opportunity for the program's applicability. Can you explain who the program is now broadened to?
Mr. Chairman and Senator Nethercott. So the current law requires that you cannot have a household income that exceeds 3/4 of the median household income for the county where your property is located. This House Bill 99 expands that to 125% of the median household income. So that expands, and keep in mind of the folks that did not qualify for 2021, almost 80% of those were because their income was exceeded the amount of income. And we also know that there are people that probably saw the income requirements and they didn't apply at all. So we know that the 125% will expand it, but the other piece that's going to expand it will be the 90%, up to 90% of your residential property tax bill with capped at 50% of the median residential property tax bill for that county. So what that's going to do is that's going to provide a larger refund for those lower valued properties than the current program does. There was an amendment on the House side that included some language that said that on the asset test, which current law, we're right about $133,000 per adult member of the household. This bill increases that to $150,000 per adult member of the household, and that's excluding the house that you live in that you're asking for relief and one car per an adult in the household. The amendment in the House said you don't have to meet that asset test if your tax liability, your tax bill exceeds 10% of your overall household income. And we don't think there's going to be a lot of people that have that situation, but it doesn't change the amount of the refund. All it does is change that they don't have to meet the asset test. If they have set aside in savings, they live in a county where property values are going up substantially, and they've lived there all their lives. These are for the situations where they've put aside some money to help with that, but they're living on Social Security and their property tax bill exceeds more than 10% of their household income. We don't know how many that will be. Our thought is it's going to be very few, but it definitely is going to now pull in a few of those taxpayers that have had increasing property values, but their income is not.
Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, because we have a little bit of time here. Do you know how many of those applicants came out of Teton County? Off the top of your
For
head.
the 2021 program? I do. So in Teton County, applications last year were 177 applications and 138 qualified.
And they didn't qualify because of income? Is that what I read somewhere? Is that why we only had 138 that qualified?
Mr. Chairman, not all of the, basically 39 applicants that didn't qualify, not all of them were due to income. Like I said, about 80% statewide of those that did not qualify were because their income exceeded. But I could not tell you specifically to Teton County what the reasoning would be. It could have been the asset test. It could have been any of the
Senator Brewer,
criteria.
did you have a follow-up?
Sure. Teton County, for 2021, 177 applicants, 138 were funded and 39 were disqualified. And if you're interested, I also have a report that shows the impacts on House Bill 99, that what the 3/4 of the gross median income for 2022 would be under current law and what the 125% is under the House Bill 99. Oh, I'm sorry, Laramie County. Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
Laramie County, the applicants were 782 applications, 536 were approved, 246 were denied. Statewide, we had 4,395 applications, 3,085 were qualified. Mr. Chairman, Senator Guru, the average check in Teton County was $1,895.11, and in Laramie County, $650.27.
Mr. Chairman, are you,
Yes.
before we go to Natrona County, which I have no desire to know, just a quick question about, do you have any concerns in reviewing those applicants about any abuses of the program? Or would you like any other maybe discretionary ability to inquire or more information in order to evaluate whether or not the applicant truly is appropriate for the program? Do you feel comfortable about that?
Mr. Chairman, Senator Nethercott, so it is true that these applications are not audited. We don't have staff to audit the applications. The Department of Revenue, or excuse me, Department of Audit doesn't audit these applications. Really, the only boots on the ground that we have are county treasurers across the state also can take these applications. And when they provide those applications to us, we have had occasion where the county treasurer would say, you know, this property owner, I was there, they filled it out. They said they don't have any other assets, but we know they own 3 apartment buildings. So we do get that type of feedback, but we really, I'm trying to say this, if there is a loophole to be found, those that are looking for loopholes will find them. But I don't believe that there is rampant abuse in this program. I truly believe by looking at the applications and actually keying some in last year, these are people in need. They really need assistance.
How do we determine how much of a refund they get?
Mr. Chairman, under the current refund program, it's up to the 1/2 of the median residential property tax bill for that county. So for example, in that. So we'll look at Albany County. So the 2022, the numbers that we've got are 1/2 of the median would be $934.60. So even if their tax bill is $3,000, they only can qualify for up to that $934.60. And that is calculated because of the statewide CAMA system. We're actually able to calculate in every county what is that median residential property tax bill. And it goes anywhere from, and I'm talking about the 1/2, it goes anywhere from the lowest we've got is $481.20 up to this year, that median residential tax bill for Teton County, $4,242.94. So
Have you given us that list before, or could we get?
I don't
Seems like
believe I
I
have.
heard those numbers before.
I put this together for, I guess it would have been Senate revenue, because that was the first time that we typically don't get the household income income numbers until later in March from economic analysis, but they did put them together for us because of this bill going through committee. I just have one copy, I'd give it to you, Mr. Chairman, and then I would email the rest of the committee if you'd like. This just basically gives
If
the
you give us
impact.
to Linda, she give us all a copy of it, please.
Piece. I
That
should have
sounds
brought
like
you
a-
copies.
A good document to use for the floor.
Mr. Chairman, another document, if you'd like, I do have a 10-year where it basically gives you what was the median residential property tax bill in each county for the last 10 years. You'll see 3 blank spots, and those are the years that we didn't fund the refund program. But if you'd like this information, I can provide that as well.
Yeah, that'd be good.
You can see that the 2021 and 2022, those increases in those median amounts are unlike what we've seen historically.
Hey, any other questions for the agency, for the director? I'll tell you, I want to be on record as killing this appropriation. Yeah. Yeah.
I have
we're
a-
gonna kill this appropriation.
I have a quick question,
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, and this was a question that I brought out on the floor, which deals with the applicability of the program. And not that I'm fixated on the abuse of this program, sounds like that's not a huge concern. And I believe that, but I am concerned about the language on page 2 of the bill, line 6, and this is outside of the appropriation, but I am curious to hear about how this will be managed for the program by allowing immediate family members of the owner of the residence to use their income for qualifying purposes. And the scenario that I envisioned was you have an adult child living in the home who works not a great job, and the homeowners, the actual owners of, the actual homeowners use, 24-year-old son's income as a basis of applying for the program. And there's no ability to make any further inquiry. And of course, the part-time college student, working at the part-time job will qualify for the program. And so thoughts about that, because I would like to strike out that language, or an immediate family member. And so the only people who can apply for the program are those that own and live in the residence.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Nethercott, we had one instance where we had a person that applied for the program last year, and it was exactly what you described. Their child lives in the home. Now, we do have the ability to promulgate rules, and we have Chapter 19 rules already in place for this program. Our interpretation of that language is it will be the property owner and whomever happens to be living there, and it'll be their combined income, because the taxpayer is still the owner of record. So we'll clarify that within rules, unless that we're told that that is not how it is intended. But if the taxpayer and whomever else is living in there meet the household income, then they could qualify. But it's just those situations where it could be a parent or a child, because we believe that's immediate family, and we'll define that in our rules as well, in those situations.
So if I can follow up, Mr. Chairman. So you do, in that I have a definition in that statute for immediate family member and what that is and what it is.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Guru, not today, but we're required to promulgate rules. Remember, as Senator Nethercott mentioned, that language has not been in this program until now.
Right.
So we will need to address it in rules. And we anticipate emergency rules since this program does go into effect for those applications in 23.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I intend to strike that in an amendment on the floor. We can't do it here in committee. So I'm signaling that out to anyone who's seen the applications for these programs or are more familiar with the people seeking these services to understand the consequences of striking it out. I only see the mischief or the exposure to abuse that could occur, and looking for those scenarios to where that's not the case and makes sense. So I'm looking for facts on the ground that supports leaving the language in there. I'm assuming there's a reason why the interim committee included that language. And I didn't hear any answers to that on the floor in the debate that we already had. I just want to make sure I'm not harming the program or the people who could benefit from the program, but also want to protect the integrity of it so the legislature doesn't come back and try to cut it as a result of abuse.
And Mr. Chairman, Senator Nethercott, quite frankly, there wasn't much discussion related to that additional language, but I do believe it's only a handful of situations where it may have occurred.
Okay, any other questions for the department? Other question for the department. I have a question on this administrative impact. It's showing about 2.74 million and 6 million. Is that, you're not asking for general funds for that? You're absorbing that, or?
Mr. Chairman, as far as administrative impact, I had requested a position, and that was included in the final budget bill as well. Keep in mind, I had one position that was totally devoted to this program, and we gave it up during the COVID-19 cuts because the program wasn't funded and the position was vacant. So we had given that up. So during my budget request, I had asked to have that position put back in place, and that was funded, but that was 108,000 approximately for that position. Other than that, we were fortunate that Enterprise Technology Services had just finished up writing our new program to administer this. And also in 2021, which was last year, as far as those refunds, it was the first year we had an online application that was available. And we still have that today. And I believe, now we've already got, 3,000 people that have qualified. We'll automatically send everybody that applied for 2021 refunds, we will automatically send them applications for 2022. Plus, they've already applied online, approximately 500 of them. But even the other ones, we've hand keyed those in. That data is out there. I don't believe it's going to take much to administer the program for this year as it did last year, because we were all hands on deck just trying to get everything keyed into a new system.
So what you're saying is we do not have to worry about the 3 administrative impact dollars? We don't have to do anything with that?
I had not requested any administrative impact dollars. Any funding that was in that fiscal note was for refunds.
Okay. All right. Any other questions? Yellow. No appropriations, no administrative impact? Is there any other public comment on this? Any other agency comment? Any other public comment? Oh.
Mr. Chairman, Robert Short, Commerce County Commissioner. It's a very difficult act to follow Director Henson, as she is very thorough in her presentation. However, I just like to state that the Wyoming County Commissioner Association stands in support of this bill. We think it targets the right audience. 4 counties have established such programs: Converse County, Teton, Lincoln, and Sublette. We really believe it's an important way for us to affect and impact those folks who the good Senator Nethercott has mentioned before, those folks living on fixed incomes. We believe this is the most effective way that we have currently to actually get that help to where it's most dire needed. And some have suggested that counties should have cutis in ludo, or skin in the game. We think that we do have such a position because we see our special districts, our schools are held whole in this. We're actually funding it out of our general fund because we really do believe this is an incredibly important way for us to help folks who are in that situation now. I know from personal experience, I've seen folks in Converse County who have applied, and they've been able to receive refunds that greatly exceed what the county would have been able to do if we lowered our mill to zero. And that is a testament to how powerful this program can actually be in helping those folks who are in most need. And with that, I'll shut my pie hole and stand for any questions.
Questions for the county commissioner? Questions for the county commissioner? Nope. Hearing none. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you again. Any other public comment? Anybody on Zoom? There is?
No, sir, there's.
Oh, nobody on Zoom, nobody in the room. I'll close public comment. Committee, what do we want to do? I'm not sure what we're going to do here. We're not approving any appropriation. Are we just approving the bill? Are we doing nothing with it? Move the bill?
Okay, all right. You don't know. But I will. Second.
Moving second to approve the bill, I guess, is all we can do. Or we can approve no appropriation. I don't know.
Mr. Chairman, I'm not familiar with the rules of the Appropriations Committee, but I do think the bill was re-referred to us. And so we are the committee that is required not to take action on the bill, even though there is no appropriation. I don't think that was clear. And actually, to the technical reading and accurate reading of the bill, there is actually an appropriation. Come to find out, because of the budget bill, that appropriation is moot. But there is in fact an appropriation on the bill. It's just that the fiscal note is now moot as a result of the passage of the budget bill. If the budget bill that it contained that $8 million appropriation did not pass or pass as it currently exists, then this fiscal note would still be relevant and may look differently. But there is in fact a fiscal note on the bill. So what I do think, since it's moot, it would be helpful for LSO to provide clarity on how a fiscal note becomes moot in light of another bill's actions on this bill, as opposed to creating a double appropriation. Because I don't believe the budget bill had any conditioning language on passage of this bill, did it?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I don't wish to muddy the water any further. However, so the budget bill did have some discussion. There were 4 bills that it listed, and it basically said that the appropriation, this $5 million, would be reduced dollar for dollar, any appropriation for each of these programs. So if this committee appropriates $3 million or a little over $2 million, what would ultimately happen is that money would be subtracted from the $5 million that is in the budget bill. So you could do it one of 2 ways. You could either do a zero appropriation and leave it all in the budget bill, or you could appropriate for House Bill 99, and that amount would be subtracted from the budget bill.
Isn't she helpful? On our budget bill. Thank you. That is really embarrassing for all of us. I'm glad she knows the answer to that. And no one on the floor knew the answer to that, right? Or how this fiscal note operated or worked or interplayed with the budget bill. I'm really glad we're doing this meeting. So, Mr. Chairman, thoughts?
So with that, I think we pass this with no appropriation, just like we've said, and let the budget bill stand. And we move this one right on out
But is our action to deny the appropriation, and so we vote no on the bill? Is that correct?
You
I
like
think
that?
we vote no on the bill to defund the appropriation, and that's what we need to do. It's a no vote on the appropriation, 100%. That's how it works. We will vote aye on the floor. It's a good little bill. We'll support it all the way. The bill doesn't die in Appropriations Committee. The bill just doesn't get funded in appropriations.
But I don't think we vote no in committee. We're not saying there is no appropriation. We're passing it with no appropriation.
I think we have to pass it with no, we don't have to. It'll work itself out. LSO will make magic happen. But I think properly,
It's a do pass fail.
it's a do pass fail. And then that makes a zero appropriation on this bill, consistent with the language in the budget bill, and those dovetail together if we have a zero appropriation here.
This will be easy to explain.
So you vote no.
before.
I'm looking at you too.
And there's still time to fix it if that's not procedurally correct. I think it is, but I think we can procedurally correct it. Tell me if you think differently. Representative Schwartz would like to speak. Former Representative Schwartz.
Yeah, certainly. Mr. Schwartz.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and esteemed members of the Senate Appropriations Committee. My only concern is there's other things in this bill besides the appropriation. And I don't know what the impact is if the re-referral just recommends no, as opposed to just referencing a zero appropriation.
But if we pass the bill and say no appropriation, that should take care of it, shouldn't it?
Mr. Chairman, yes, unless you want to protect some of that $5 million from the other bills. So to guarantee that there's an increased amount for the refund program as opposed to the deferral. And I can't recall what's still alive.
Would you be able to help us out a little bit up here?
Hmm?
Senate Appropriations?
And Senator Nethercott doesn't like.
The House Appropriations.
Yeah.
That's what that is.
That's what that is.
Obfuscation.
Mr. Chairman, if I may,
Yes.
I can't help myself. I was trained.
It could be used to back up other. There's an appropriation, and no, it's not an appropriation.
Does he come up? Don's kind of come up and we phoned a friend. Not that that wasn't a wonderful explanation, but yes, that'd be the one.
Think we ought to put this off or you want to vote on it?
Let's get some big guns up here. Let's get them all.
Tell somebody who knows.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I mean, I want to make sure we do this right, because actually I want to make sure that we don't send the wrong message to the floor when we do. That's my biggest concern here.
Yeah.
Is whatever we do, I just want to make sure that we're, and
I think you're right. I think
Well-
that's what we need to worry about.
if I'd have had another minute and a half when we did this, I would have explained why we didn't need to be here in the first place, but I lost that up. So I remember when you walked over to me, said it's too late now. I know, and that's why I want to make sure we take a minute right now and get it right.
To the representative, the former representative, there is an appropriation in the bill. And if we move the bill out with an appropriation, there's extra money that can be appropriated as a backstop to other property tax reduction bills.
But I don't know if it's
Is there or is there not money in this bill? And the answer that I believe is indicated is yes, particularly based on the language of the budget bill 1.
See, now we're.
But if we move it out with an appropriation, then
Right.
it's a dollar for dollar decrease for the 5 million. And there's no sense in that. So Don, we have a little problem here. We've got a bill re-referred to us, but it has no appropriation. So we're not knowing how we should vote on this thing. She's got the appropriation. The director has the appropriation in the budget bill, and it's $5 million and it's already in there. And the budget bill says that if we pass anything in this bill, it decreases the $5 million for dollar. So we want to not mess up her 5 million, but we don't know how to do this. You know, we're thinking of voting yes and no appropriation. Or do we just vote no on the bill and all we're dealing with is appropriation, which there is none. Hey, you know, another thing we need to do is these fiscal notes need to have a date on them. Because this fiscal note must be way out of date compared to where we are on the bill. And you can't tell that by looking at it. Looks like you still have an appropriation. So go ahead. I'm sorry.
Mr. Chairman, I believe you're correct. The engrossed bill does not have an appropriation in it. The bill can be referred to this committee under your rule 4.8, a bill containing an appropriation or which requires an appropriation, and this may have required an appropriation, can be sent for re-referral to your committee. I think the appropriate action in this case is to not amend the appropriation back into the bill, if that is your pleasure, and let the House Bill 1, the budget bill, stand. And then you can vote do pass on that, on the bill as it states without an appropriation. The do pass does not negatively impact the ordering of the committee of the whole.
So voted do pass with no appropriation.
Right. And that would allow the $5 million to stand. And I believe you're exactly right. The fiscal note is on the introduced version. It does not change every day with amendments. The House modified this legislation. We were asked what that modification would do to it. We have not asked the department. We expect it would have some upward impact, but indeterminable, if any. So I think the fiscal note before you suggests that $5 million plus the natural growth in this program, because it is being utilized more, would be sufficient. So that is an appropriate course of action if you desire.
Okay, any other questions for Dawn?
Yes.
Yes.
And it's just procedural, as we learned on the Appropriations Committee. So we would move the bill without an appropriation. So do we need to make an amendment to that effect of have no appropriation, or what type of procedural action does that require?
Mr. Chairman, I don't think it requires anything because there isn't an appropriation in it currently. And your approval is only a recognition that you're not increasing a zero appropriation. So you're just adopting a no appropriation. It can be sent under Rule 4.8 for the body to ask you, does this require an appropriation? And I think you've done your due diligence as a committee to look and inquire about.
And can I just do one follow-up?
Yes,
Mr.
go ahead.
Chairman? And the reason why there's no appropriation in this bill, and the reason why the fiscal note is moot, is because of Budget Bill 1, right? But there's no indication in this bill or the fiscal note that would inform anyone of that fact. Is that fair?
Mr. Chairman, that is absolutely fair, yes.
Okay.
And in that defense, the budget bill action on that occurred, technically last week. Yes.
Yeah, and on the body, each one of them know the budget so well that they'll know that is true.
Mr. Chairman? Mr. Chairman?
Yes, yeah.
Another question, because it's can settle another once for all. Anyone, well, I just heard you say Rule 4.8. Anyone can refer a bill to this committee.
No.
If it has, and then we can determine. Any bill can be referred to this committee if it has any appropriate, to see, to send to the Appropriations Committee to answer these very questions. Like this bill that had an appropriation on it when it was in the House or not. But anyone can do that, but that's in the rules.
Mr. Chairman, I might rely a little bit on Ian here. I have a little bit more experience on the House, but typically when there is a motion to re-refer, the presiding officer will indicate without objection, so ordered. So Well, a member could suggest that they could also, another member could object to sending it to this committee.
And Mr.
Go
Chairman,
ahead.
another procedural question that's been confusing to me this entire time is if we said do, pass, fail, what does that mean? Ian or Don, either of you, from the Appropriations Committee?
Mr. Chairman, Ian Shaw from the LSO. Yeah, that's an interesting question. We were talking about that the other day. A do, pass, fail is the failure to adopt a motion in the committee. And so it's a real question of whether it constitutes action on the part of the committee. Now, if only a single committee acts that way, then what happens is the rule would require it to be reported, not in a chairman's report out of the committee, but reported to LSO so that they can report it on the website. And the question then becomes, what effect does that have with the order of how things are considered on committee of the whole, meaning that the bills have a do not pass recommendation or put to the bottom. Well, this is a case where there's no recommendation that it do not pass. It's a failed motion to pass. And so it's a bit of a gray area in the rules. And the context of our discussion was whether or not we need to clarify it in the rules in the upcoming session.
Further follow-up, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, go ahead.
And so the Senate Appropriations Committee is limited in the actions that it can take within the Appropriations Committee on re-referrals, to my understanding. And my understanding is that we can only amend the enactment dates and or the appropriation. And so obviously we know how to amend an enactment date or the effective date of an appropriation. We got that covered. But on an appropriation, if we're trying to kill an appropriation, total, we're going to defund a bill. Do we move to defund it? Or do we just not pass it out or vote no on the bill?
I think that the recommendation, the purpose for it, first I would say that the rules don't cover that specifically. And so I think either of those, the committee could do. But I think the intent is for you to take out the appropriation if you believe that's the appropriate action, because the whole purpose of the committee is to act upon the appropriation itself, not the general merits of the bill. And if you give it a do not pass, that may reflect more on the merits.
So can we do a do pass, no appropriation?
Take out the appropriation and a do pass
Yeah,
in an amendment? Yes, Mr. Chairman, you could.
there is no appropriation.
Okay, that's right. I'm
So
sorry. On this
we
one,
we would vote to do pass the bill, no appropriation. Is that
Mr.
right?
Chairman, that's appropriate. Yes.
Yeah, so Mr. Chairman, procedurally, like the lawyer that I am, right? So in this bill, at least in my cursory review of it, there's nowhere that there is listed an appropriation in the page line numbers, right? It's just a fiscal note. And so if we were to, assuming, we're disregarding the budget bill, if we were to defund the program, how would we do that with the fiscal note, with this bill draft?
Mr. Chairman, that's a good question because the only way to defund this bill would be go into some other law or the budget bill, et cetera, and do it that way. And I am not aware of that happening. Whether it's the appropriation or lack of in the bill.
Mr.
But I
Chairman,
think what she's saying is if it had an appropriation, she's wanting to kill the appropriation. right?
yes, that's correct.
Yeah.
And I'm not really wanting to do that. I support the program, no defunding. It's just moving forward in the future. The question is, how do I correct the paper trail on this bill draft to do two things? One, either remove the fiscal note for my fellow senators when they look at the bill when it's being explained on the floor, or two, just provide that or defund a fiscal note, right? Without an amendment on page line number, because this fiscal note is not found on a page and line number in the bill draft. And so I'm not clear on how to remove a fiscal note.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
The other option you have, absent, taking the extraordinary measure of trying to amend the budget bill in this bill through this committee, which would be unusual, is to give it a do not pass recommendation. If you believe it needs or for a fiscal reason is not appropriate, it's within the committee's authority to give it a do not pass recommendation.
The problem is we do want to pass the bill.
Mr. Chairman, if I could add to Ian's comment on that. One, his preface that you could take the extraordinary measure of modifying the budget bill as a separate non-codified section in this bill. We have long advised against doing that, and there are some bills that do that this year. We would also caution the use of contingent appropriations, which this is, of the $5 million. And I think there's about 6 or 8 of those contingencies in this year's budget bill. And I think, Senator, your comments are raising concerns with that practice, not relative to this program in particular, but the general practice and the unintended consequences that may rise from that.
Chairman, if I can, just this conversation with LSO, I'm not trying to add to the workload because I can't imagine how to track that. But in some way to asterisk or star, either with a date on the fiscal note or this bill is impacted by other legislation, and it doesn't, just to signal to all of us of that fact, it would be, I think, helpful if we continue this practice of these conditions, and I imagine we will, because it's been so popular this year, and it's in our minds. So think about some solutions on that to stop me from jumping up and wasting everyone's time.
The department wants to speak also.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, that's really loud. Mr. Chairman, so interestingly enough, in this specific program, this bill, House Bill 9, could pass. And it may not be funded. And in future years, it may not be funded. So I think that that's one of the reasons that, typically, if this program is funded, it's through an appropriation through the Department of Revenue's budget. This bill typically, whenever it's been altered, typically didn't have an appropriation. It was always through the department's budget. So I think that that's where the confusion was. And one of the reasons that we ended up putting a fiscal note in here was because the criteria was changing and we had asked for $1 million already in our budget request, along with the governor's letter. So I think that that's one of the reasons for this confusion. But typically, this would be funded via an appropriation in the Department of Revenue's budget, and you wouldn't have seen an appropriation on the bill.
But I'm thinking we want to pass this because it changes the criteria for who can apply. And so we want this bill, but we just don't want to have an appropriation. So I think what I hear is that, did you call somebody else to help us? Have we got another legal authority higher than you two? Oh, no. So what I think we want to do, we've moved the bill, we've seconded it. We'll move it do pass with no appropriation. Will that suit the body of such? All right. Thank you very much for the input. Thank you for educating us. Okay, let's have a roll call on this. House Bill 99.
99. Senator Anderson.
Aye.
Senator Carew.
Aye.
Senator Nattercott.
That baby squeaked by 3-0. So House Bill 99, boy, this is going to be fun to discuss on the floor. Yeah. Huh? No. Well, the revenue guys are going to have a little explaining to do on it, I think. Okay, there's no other bills to come before the